Welcome to Hey Listen, where we discuss faith, leadership, and the mission of the church. We're so glad you've joined us. Now to today's episode. All right, today we're having a conversation about the difference between busyness and fruitfulness. And I'll be honest, as I was thinking through podcast topics, I was thinking through what am I struggling with, or what am I going through? What am I thinking through? And this is one that I think is an ongoing struggle for myself, staying busy rather than even just being faithful to do what I need to do. So
yeah, Ridgecrest, we're not the biggest church in town, but we are busy.
We are.
And we've talked about that. Like, you don't have to be big to be complicated. Mm-hmm. And we are complicated. Mm-hmm. And there are things you could say, well, to be a church, there's several things we want to accomplish, right? We want to be missional. Mm-hmm. We want to care for the vulnerable. We want to teach and preach and worship. Well, all of those require expertise and energies.
Yeah.
So when you start putting all those disciplines together, when you think about a church and the multiple things we're trying to accomplish, there's a sense in which it will be complicated. And when things are complicated, it feels busy. Mm-hmm. And we've talked a lot around here about simplification and trying to get rid of some, whether it's redundancy or it's just, I don't know, being busy to be busy. Mm-hmm. We don't want to do that. Right. But we have to make sure that we're, being a good biblical church, mm-hmm. and fulfilling all those functions that the church needs to fulfill mm-hmm. in a community. But when we bring that down to the individual, what we see is that there are a handful of people that are always trying to be faithful, and you have what's the old saying, 20% do 80% of the work or whatever. And that 20%, I really, they get burned out. That's right. Mm-hmm. They're so busy, they're burnt.
Yes.
And we recognize that, and mm-hmm. we're trying our best to help people not do that. Yeah. But every time we put something on the calendar, mm-hmm. We're probably, most likely making it harder for someone to keep that more simple kind of faith that mm-hmm. we'd like them to have. So it's a hard thing as a leader to try to find that balance.
Oh, absolutely.
Not just for oneself, but you're responsible for finding that right balance for the whole church.
Yes. And, even back in the fall, we talked about just the volunteer capacity it takes for each of our things between hospitality and, if it's a kids ministry event, you've got ratios and all of that stuff. Then you've got parent involvement. But even if it's Spirit of the Season, that took a ton of volunteers. It was a wonderful event back, a few months ago, but it took so much manpower.
Right. And don't forget, we had the community fall festival. Yes. We had the women's event, and mm-hmm. it seems like there was a third. Oh, we had missions week.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So within a 5-week period, I think it was.
Yes.
We had 3 what we would call here level A events.
Yes.
And most of us that on staff were involved in all 3 of those, but so many of our church people were too. So we were asking like 3 Fridays in a row mm-hmm. or something like that. 2 in a row, and then there was another one that wasn't on a Friday, but it was within that context mm-hmm. of like a 5-week period. And it was too much, and we all acknowledge that. And yet every one of those events, we really felt like the Lord worked through them.
Absolutely.
And it was successful. Yes. Mm-hmm. But we started planning just right after that. Okay, we can't do that again.
Yes.
We can't have 3 events mm-hmm. like that so close together because, it really isn't just about wearing out your staff. It's about wearing out your congregation.
Absolutely. And this can go so far beyond even our busyness at church, but families are busy.
They are. Sports.
Drama. Extra things. Yes.
And I don't mean like drama. I'm talking about like official drama.
Right. Yeah. Theater programs and dance class and all of the things. My family, we stay busy partially because church is busy.
Right.
My kids aren't even really involved in sports, and we still have very few evenings where we're all home. It's busy.
We have an empty nest. And like this week, Jenny and I were looking at the calendar, and I think we had 1 free evening.
Yes.
And most of that, again, is church and mm-hmm. Us trying to help out with some nonprofits that we love and mm-hmm. things like that, and there's always some opportunities like that.
Right.
One of the things, I like to try to think in terms of word pictures and images. When I think about this subject in my own life, I've not done this in a long time, but when I was younger, I bought a Trek mountain bike and was doing some biking. And when I was learning about that, because, you know, I knew how to ride a bike, but there's knowing how to ride a bike, and then there's like doing it for real, you know, seriously. And one of the terms that's used by people who are experienced in this world is cadence.
Okay. The
word cadence is, I think, a key concept for us to consider in this podcast today. Because if you think about it, if you have children, if you're involved in a church, if you have a job, if you help with any kind of community event, you've got action.
Yeah.
You know, okay, you've got movement. So we need to all admit, life is going. If you're alive, you're moving.
Yep.
So the question though is can you find the proper balance? And that's where the word cadence comes in. So and when you're talking about a bicycle, not a motorbike, but a bicycle, the cadence is the rhythm and kind of the, if you want to think about it in terms of like the revolutions per minute. Okay. And on a 10 speed, how you manage that is you want to keep your cadence the same always. So your feet are, you need to keep your feet moving all about at the same pace. But sometimes there's uphill and sometimes there's downhill. So the difference is the gears. You learn how to shift gears, and you use the proper gear for whether it's uphill or downhill and what you're trying to accomplish. So I think when we talk about busyness in the spiritual life, we're not saying do nothing. We're saying let's find a pace that works. Let's get the cadence right, and let's learn how to shift the gears, because you can't be in a, if you've ever put a bike in I guess it's a low gear where it's heavy, you know, man, your legs start burning really quick. But when you get it into higher gear, you're just spinning your wheels, right? And you're not going anywhere. It's a really weird feeling to be moving your feet really fast, but you're only, you know, barely going along. So I think that's what we want to do. We want to say, okay, life is about movement. So let's get our cadence right. Let's find kind of that speed for us. And then let's figure out what it looks like for us to be able to switch gears back and forth so that we can keep our balance.
Absolutely. So let's look at the kind of defining busyness versus fruitfulness. So busyness is activity driven, performance based, it's draining. But fruitfulness is spirit produced. It's rooted in a relationship with Christ. And so knowing the difference between those two things, how do we go from just busyness to fruitfulness?
I think from a biblical perspective, I would look closely at Jesus's interaction with the Pharisees.
Okay.
I think the Pharisees are a really good example, or bad example, however you want to look at it, of busyness, but not necessarily fruitfulness. Whereas with Jesus, he's busy, but he's fruitful. So on the one hand, the Pharisees were doing things, and we would use the word legalistically. I mean, even the word pharisaical comes to mind. But the whole idea there was they were so focused on just doing the right thing that they kind of lost their way. And I'm not just saying that. I think Jesus is telling them they've lost their way. He's not saying that they're necessarily doing wrong things. They're just not doing it for the right reasons. And so when we look at the biblical way of things and the way the church should be, the language is of fruitfulness and abiding. John 15, I noticed you put in the notes, and then also Galatians, where Paul talks about the fruit of the Spirit. You know, there's something about those two ideas that are very organic. If you look, the abiding passage is dealing with a vine. So both of them, actually, fruit of the Spirit and the abiding passage are horticultural or botanical. And they're showing us that there is an organic, real way to do this. Now, I think the busyness, you know, in my mind, we get away from we go from a metaphor that's organic to one that's more mechanical. Now, I know the bike cadence thing I said a minute ago is very mechanical, but when I think about mechanical, I'm thinking like the gears, like you're all these gears. Open up the back of an old watch and look at all those intricate gears. To me, that's a good illustration of busyness. It's so intricate. Everything is operating in a very tight. You know, you can't have much much variance there.
Yeah.
Everything has to be in place, and real quick life can throw a monkey wrench into your gears, right?
Yeah.
And not to get nerdy here, but one of the things that Tolkien does really well in Lord of the Rings is he shows the difference between the good life being one of trees and forests and rivers, and the bad life is one of machines and gears. And most people think that he was railing against the loss of the English countryside to industrialism, that he saw the scars on the land from factories. So if you've ever seen an old broken down factory, they're not pretty.
Sure.
Rusty, there's scraggly bushes everywhere. And he saw that the world was turning into a junkyard in that sense. And so when you read about the orcs, when you see what they do, when they take over something, even in the movies, everything is bleak and it looks like a broken down factory environment when you see the orcs. Whereas when you see the elves and the other good guys in Tolkien, you see trees and rivers and natural beauty. So I think Tolkien's, the world that he built is built on his biblical worldview of fruitfulness and peace and rest
and margin.
Yes. Like you look at the elves and they're pretty chill, until they pull out a sword and then they're really awesome. But they're for the most part, when you look, they're readers. They're contemplative, and so I think that whether you're talking about the difference between Jesus and the Pharisees, if you want to use a literature metaphor, the orcs versus the elves, there's something to that. And I think, I really believe, and this is I'm going to be critical of my Baptist upbringing. I think that we as a denomination have erred in that direction of the Pharisaical perspective, the mechanics of programs and process that's busy, but not always fruitful.
Yeah.
And so I would really like for our church to take a step back and say, whoa, wait a second. Programs can be good, but if it's just more machinery,
right,
that's the factory. That's a scar, and that turns into a scar.
Yeah.
How many programs do we continue just because we've always done them?
Sure.
And it's kind of like
because another church is doing
that's
them.
Right. That's right. Or we feel guilt. Who else is going to do this?
Yeah.
Well, maybe we need to let something go long enough. What if we were more fruitful spiritually? What if we were more kind and gracious and loving? Would that be better than a Tuesday night ministry that we've done for 100 years, but nobody can really remember why we do it anymore?
Yeah.
But the churches I grew up in tended to just keep programs going without really thinking about their fruitfulness.
Yeah. With Robert coming on now 6 months ago, he's done such a good job of asking us those questions. He was here he's our next gen pastor, but he was at Ridgecrest before he came into that role and in leadership, served as a deacon. So he knew Ridgecrest well, but even coming in, he's saying, okay, we do this all the time, but why did this start?
Why?
What's our purpose? But what's the vision behind this? And it's been challenging, but good to really think through, do we need to keep doing this? Are we doing this for the right reason? Is it still fulfilling the purpose that we had originally set out? We did story time for preschoolers for 3 years, last Tuesday of every month. And it was a sweet time, but it kind of stopped filling the purpose of outreach that we hoped it would be. So we're going to rethink that for 2026. It's not going to look the same. It's going to, we're going to wait until we have some clear direction on what that needs to look like.
Robert has been such a refreshment, and he's just a great man. But one of the things I felt like, and I knew it would help us, but I didn't realize how much. He had been out of ministry for several years and working in the nonprofit world. With what I think is probably one of the best nonprofits I've ever seen in Convoy of Hope. I mean, they're just phenomenal what they do. Great leadership over there, great organization. And he learned a lot about that. And and I think that outside perspective, getting away from, like, we do churchy things sometimes. We get stuck in church ways. And so he is bringing this this perspective that's outside of the church, and that's good for us.
Yes.
We need to rethink some things, and so those perspectives are helpful.
Yeah. Yeah,
no
absolutely.
doubt.
So how do we keep ourselves from kind of drifting away into the busyness? I wrote down good things become ultimate things. So we fill our time, our family schedule with good things, but then all of a sudden those good things become the most important, and it's not always of God.
Yeah, the answer is Sabbath. The Old Testament idea of Sabbath. And I want to say right out of the gate, I've seen Christians be dogmatic about Sabbath in a way that just is so counterproductive. They say, well, if you're not taking Sabbath seriously, you're not a real Christian. Well, you're defeating the purpose there. But we know that in Christ, He is our Sabbath. We know that He is the fulfillment of the Old Testament. And we know that we don't need to have 600 some odd specific rules to keep the Sabbath like the Hebrew people developed over the years, But back in the 1950s, there was this a rabbi from New York City, Abraham Heschel, and he wrote a book entitled Sabbath. And it's one of those books that I warn people, like, it's not written from a Christian perspective, but it's written from an Old Testament biblical perspective. And there's things in it that you're not going to agree with. But he I think English was like his fourth or fifth language.
Wow.
And yet he writes, so he's a masterful in his use of the English language. And he said that the Sabbath is a cathedral in time. And I love that image. And I told you earlier with cadence, I like to have word pictures. For me, to avoid busyness, I need to view Sabbath as a cathedral. I need to see that in activity, there's worship.
Yeah.
In being. And so philosophically, we could go down the route of, there's two basic ways of doing life. You can be or you can do. And I think in evangelical Christianity, we have gone way down the path of doing.
Yeah.
We are doers. The evangelical movement in the last 400 years, the missions movement, think about that. Think about what Baptists have done in the cooperative program in terms of uniting churches, all these things we do, all these programs. We have disaster relief programs that are denominationally the best in the world. We have the best mission sending organization in the world. All those things. We're doers, man. We get things done. Yeah. We've had publishing companies like Broadway. It used to be Holman Broadway, and now it's Lifeway. Man, we get things done. Yeah. We do things. But we are
at what expense?
At what expense? What have we lost? We've lost fruitfulness. Yeah. We're so wrapped up in getting things done that we forget that sometimes we just need to walk with God in the cool of the day, because that's the way it was in the beginning. And Sabbath is a reminder that we don't. The best things in the world, we don't necessarily create. We just enjoy. Yeah. And the Sabbath is an opportunity to stop the chaos for a little bit and to remember that God gives us the good things. Yeah. The very best things you have in your life, Kayla, are gifts from God. Your children, your relationships, your church, all those are gifts from God. They're not you. You didn't build them. You didn't, I think about my children, like I don't deserve how good they are, and biologically they're mine, but I know they're a gift from God that ultimately they're the Lord's, all the best things are, if you don't have Sabbath, you don't see that. Just everything is just, either you own it, it's yours, mine, mine. I'm very unhealthy, I think. So I think the key here is the biblical concept of Sabbath. Yeah. We find what that means for us, and I want to encourage people. Colby, we were talking about this earlier. There's times when we're dogmatic about things, theologically and otherwise. Yeah. This is one of those areas where I think Christians need to be very, very open-handed and open-minded to say, Kayla, your path toward Sabbath and mine are going to be very different because our personalities are different and our life situations are different. Yeah. So for me to impose some kind of rule,
the right way to do it.
What good could I do?
Yeah, now, that's so good.
Yeah, like for me, I think what I could do for you is I could probably unpack like the theological side of this, the biblical side of this. I could help you there, but for me to like say, okay, ABC 1, 2, 3. Voila! Now you're rested. No way. You've got to figure that out yourself. And I think that's what we want to do when we bring people to church. We don't want them to think that we're going to give them the ABCs 1, 2, 3s of how to live a good life.
Right.
But what we want to do is we want to give them the raw material to build the life that God wants them to live, that honors Christ from your context.
Yeah.
And your context and my context don't have to be the same. And we can honor God differently and yet, I think equally. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not going to be the same. So,
and I think
Sabbath,
that should be
that's
freeing
true.
for us.
Yes.
There's not like this perfect, for me, like a Friday is my typical day that I try to find some time that's specific. But I think, you're also saying like it has to be worked into our regular routine and rhythms. It's not just this one standalone.
Absolutely. It's funny, you have to be somewhat intentional. So you have to have a plan, which requires work and energy. But we all know, like in our jobs, once we have a process, many times then we can get our job done and not feel stressed out.
Yeah.
So for me, in writing sermons, when I'm talking to young pastors, it's the same thing. I'm always telling them, here's my process. Yeah. Do not copy my process. I'm a strange duck. I'm built different than most. I do things different. But if you can learn something from my process, fine. But what I'm always trying to do is help them see that they have to work hard at developing a process.
Yeah.
Because it's the upfront energies that lead to the back end of Sabbath and rest and enjoyment. And so a lot of people do not find margin because their life is a mess.
Yeah.
They're chaos. They're living chaos. And so when you're living in chaos, you're just kind of putting out one fire after another.
Yeah.
And in life, we can't have a process that puts out every fire. But a lot of your fires are because you don't have a good process.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about maybe some signs when you are stuck in that busyness versus fruitfulness. I'm gonna read through this list and then we can kind of unpack them a little bit. But irritability and exhaustion or resentment, just some of those emotions that you're feeling, loss of joy in spiritual disciplines, the shallow relationships or spiritual dryness, and then little evidence of heart change.
Wow. Well, the whole irritability shows that most Baptists are too busy. We're pretty good at being irritable. All those things are true. I don't know. I think that look at a typical Sunday for a typical worshiper, not just in the Baptist world, but again, we come in hot, we just fly in hot. And some of our podcasts, we've talked about this and like, what do we need to do to get our kids and our families ready for worship? But again, because we're moving so fast in life, we don't have time to be in a good place. We've not taken the time to be in a good place to worship. And I think that when we have a really good friend in ministry or as we work together, if you can tell someone is just really tired and I think we need to confront them with that. Like, are you okay? Are you not sleeping? Are you not resting? It just seems like you're not yourself today. I think we need our brothers and sisters to call us out more on that. And I think that sometimes we're just like, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt or whatever. And that's, I need the benefit of the doubt, but I also sometimes need somebody to say, listen, if you can't be in a better frame of mind in this meeting, you shouldn't be in this meeting.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes we're really not even that aware. We may like say something or whatever. Well, if that's not who we are, we should have a check and but sometimes that has to be pointed out to us, especially if it's an ongoing. Sometimes we just get stuck in that, but it needs to be pointed out so that we can grow. And it also, even if it may sting a little bit, it feels good to know that someone does care.
That's right.
That they want to help me get to a better spot.
This is way more than we can talk about in the few minutes we have left. But when we started talking about church planning, we wanted to plant another church here in Springfield, and we still have a hope that we can do that someday. We called it the Waypoint Church, and the concept that Dr. Coleman developed, everybody that read it was just so touched by it because one of the key core principles was rest, right? Putting rest in a higher priority than doing things. Yeah. But the problem is, to get a church started, you got to do things. Yes. So we realized right away that though the core value was excellent, we needed to have a strategy for getting things done to get to that place.
Yeah.
That it would be nice if we could start with, let's just rest, but there has to be some activity there. And again, that's just one of those things we've been trying to work through and figure out. And, but I still, to this day, I still feel like that concept that Dr. Coleman developed, my heart longs for that because it's so different than what I've known in evangelical Baptist life.
Yeah.
And so there's something to that, and I don't know that we have found the answer yet, but I think, Kayla, as a congregation, we're searching for it. We're looking for it.
Absolutely. I think, I have this question on here: am I abiding or just accomplishing? And I thought, man, I need to put that on my mirror, on my computer, because how often I'm trying to just accomplish the task, whether that is cleaning my kitchen or, writing a lesson. I have a whole list of things I'm trying to accomplish, but that seems to prioritize sometimes just abiding
a
in
checklist
Him.
Doesn't sound like Jesus does it.
No.
But abiding sure does. And I knew that passage and I knew that concept, but when I came to Ridgecrest, the person who taught me the most about that was Randy Copeland. I think John 15 is kind of his life verse. And there's a man who has accomplished much in the world of missiology and missions, and yet his abiding, his idea of abiding is his core principle.
Yes. I can't even say the word or hear the word without just thinking of Pastor Randy.
As soon as we say John 15 abiding, I mean your mind goes there.
Yes.
Which is a great testament and testimony to who he is as a man and as a minister. Yeah. And I think he would tell you that the times in his life where he is struggling the most is when he forgets his own idea there that we need to abide. And so it's not something we figure out and then we're just set for life. No. Sometimes the hill that we're trying to pedal up is way bigger than us. And so to abide, we're going to have to surrender to the Spirit more. Yeah. And then we do occasionally have a downhill. And when we do that, we need to learn how to coast, Kayla.
Yes.
And accomplishing things, if you get momentum, that's spiritual. You'll get things done. The problem is that we're trying to accomplish too many things in our own power, and busyness can't fix. You can't work hard enough to figure it all out. The only way that we're going to see revival and true spiritual renewal is if the Holy Spirit is the power source.
Absolutely. Thank you again for joining us today. We'll see you next time on Hey Listen.